My beginning. Where to begin? Let me first explain how it was that I came to be born at 12 Cambridge Street in Bletchley, which now forms part of Milton Keynes. In those days, Bletchley had grown into a quiet, very pleasant, small market town. On one side it encroached on Fenny Stratford, known to us as just Fenny, which had once been the separate larger village. Fenny Stratford had its own little railway station at its edge, across the A5 Watling Street on the far side from Bletchley. At the other end of Bletchley, as you reached the Buckingham Road, was Bletchley Station, with Bletchley Park just beyond. Bletchley Park is well known now as Station X, where the code breakers worked during the war, most famously on the Enigma and Lorentz codes. It is also noted for being where the world's first semi-programmable computer, Colossus, was invented. But during the war, all that the locals knew, except for the few who worked there, was that it was some kind of top-secret institution. Turning left out of the station approach leads into Bletchley itself. Coming under the railway bridge, on the right across the road, was an apron of hard standing behind the footpath. To the rear of that stood the Park Hotel, the Co-op Butcher's Shop, a pub, and the Working Men's Club where Uncle Reg played billiards one evening a week. There was a fish and chip shop a bit further along. To the left was a short row of funny little old corrugated iron, tin buildings as we called them, that were actually the first shops that side of the road. Quite soon after passing those, the pavement on that left side became a lovely, wide, spacious one. The largest shop in Bletchley, a little further along into the town on the left, was the Co-op department store. There were a great many small shops in Bletchley and Fenny Stratford, but the Co-op was the closest to a chain store there was. Nearly all the others were small, independent businesses. The payment system in that big Co-op was fascinating. The shop assistant wrote a bill and took your money. Then the money and bill were placed in a lidded tub. The assistant pushed this tub up into a clear plastic vertical tube which it just fitted. As the tub went into the tube it shot up and then along under the ceiling to disappear we knew not where. Soon after, back came the tub with the receipt and any change. There was a grid of horizontal tubes under the ceiling, and a vertical tube from each counter intersecting this grid, so you could often see several tubs at a time whizzing about to and fro. As a child I could quite happily watch that while Mum shopped. I know now that it was some kind of pneumatic system, but when I was small it seemed almost like magic to me. My mother, Kitty Wallace, was born 19th of February 1920 in Hackenthorpe, Derbyshire. By the time she was 10 years old, she had moved with her family to Bayton, across the border into Yorkshire. Bayton was then a small mining town near Sheffield. Her father had a clerical job at the mine. He had a physical deformity, a humpback. This was caused when he was a baby. I have heard two stories as to how this happened. One version had it that someone minding him let go of the pram, the baby carriage, whilst out walking, and it ran away downhill and tipped over, throwing him out. The other was that somebody who was playing with him, tossing him into the air, dropped him. Whatever the truth, Grandad Wallace wasn't fit enough to be a miner. However, he was obviously smart enough for the clerical work, or he would not have been employed. Mum's mother baked pork pies for the local butcher. She was a lay nurse and the local hatcher and dispatcher too. That is, she was an unqualified midwife who also laid out the dead, which involved washing and dressing them to make their appearance as presentable as possible. Whenever she had been to a laying out, the first thing Mum asked when her mother got home was whether she had washed her hands. My grandmother also had a lodger, Bill, throughout Mum's childhood. She must certainly have been a hard worker. The youngest of 5 children by some years, Mum was never very healthy as a child. In fact, the story goes that when her father first saw her after she was born, he commented that it would be kinder to put the poor little bugger out of her misery. However, She has so far managed to reach her 92nd year. My father, Jack Blaine, was born in Bletchley, 14th of August 1918, at 14 Brooklands Road, where he lived until his marriage. He was the 7th of 8 living children. His father was a train driver, driving steam trains out of Bletchley Station, which was then a very large, busy main railway junction. His mother had been a school teacher. As was mandatory then, she left work when she married. I didn't know Mum's parents. Her dad died when she was 16 years old, and her mother when I was 2. So I really only knew Dad's parents. His father died when I was 13, but his mother lived until 1975. Mum's eldest sister Nellie, who was some 15 years her senior, married Reg Cutts in 1928 and moved with him to Bletchley, where he managed the local co-op butcher's shop near the railway station. In those days, Uncle Reg really was a butcher. The animals, the beasts, were delivered live from local farms to the big shop yard, slaughtered and butchered, cut up, on the premises. Although Mum was sickly as a child, when she holidayed in Bletchley away from the coal pits, her health always improved. So, when she left school at 14, as was the normal age then, Mum's father and mother agreed that she could accept the offer of going to live in Bletchley with her sister and brother-in-law. This would be around Easter 1934. Mum and Nellie were very close. Auntie Nellie and Uncle Reg had a special place in my life. Not exactly like either second parents or grandparents, but different to my other aunts and uncles, and they always played a large part in my childhood. They were known to me as just Auntie and Uncle. All the other aunts and uncles had their names added. In the early 1930s, Nellie and Reg had bought a new 3-bedroom detached house on Cambridge Street. It even had a garage, which was unusual then. Most ordinary folk owned neither their own home nor a car. I just did not realise when I was very young that Auntie and Uncle were certainly among the most affluent people I knew then. They were not really wealthy, but never had to worry about finances. Uncle's older family members had all been reasonably well off, and Uncle had inherited. He had a good job, and Auntie taught the piano at home as well. As you entered the front door of their house, the stairs led up to the right. The hallway went straight along to the kitchen door. The kitchen was small and quite dark, with just a little window at the right-hand side of the house, overlooking the small lawn behind the garage, where there were 2 lovely lilac trees near the next-door house's fence. Behind the kitchen was a 1-storey brick extension to the house, a small one which contained a coal shed and an outside toilet. There was also a toilet in the upstairs bathroom at the front of the house. The small kitchen table was under the window, with the door to the left of it and the cooker to the right, against the inside end wall. The sink was fitted to the back wall against the extension. Although the left-hand sink draining board was fixed in place, the right-hand one could only be fitted when the kitchen door was closed. There was so little room. Opposite the table was a chimney breast with an enclosed fire that had a back boiler behind it for heating water. In the alcove to the left of this was their dog Fritz's basket. The pantry led off from the right side of the hallway, against the outside wall next to the kitchen and under the stairs. There was just no room for another door in the kitchen, and very little for cabinets. It's a good thing that there was a pantry, and there were cupboards in the living room, on either side of the chimney breast, where dishes, etc. could be kept. All the living was done, as was usual, in the back room. We might think of it as a dining room, but it was a living diner then. For most people, that was because heating 2 rooms all the time would just have cost too much. After all, no central heating. The kitchen fire warmed one wall of that back room too. At Cambridge Street, we lived in the back mainly because Auntie's piano, for her teaching, was in the front room. This was where she gave her lessons. Late afternoons after school, early evenings and Saturday mornings. It is a shame the living was done that way round, as the front room had a bay window and was very light. The living room at the back only got a bit of sunlight early in the morning. It never seemed to get terribly warm either, despite Auntie and Uncle having room-sized carpets covering the floors in their house. Auntie did not feel the cold, so there was usually just quite a small fire going in the living room, and of course it had to be pretty chilly for the fire to be lit at all. Upstairs, the small bedroom door faced the top of the stairs. Next to this at the back was Mum's bedroom, behind Auntie and Uncle's room at the front. Like their bedroom, the bathroom was at the front, next to them, above the front end of the hallway and the bottom of the staircase. For when there was no kitchen fire lit, the bathroom and kitchen each had a geyser to heat water. This was a kind of little boiler fitted to the wall, which only fired up and heated the water when you manually turned it on. A long horizontal tap or faucet could be swivelled to where you wanted the water. The house had a lovely, big, long garden. The end of the garden backed onto the tennis courts of the municipal park known as the Central Gardens. This ran from Bletchley Road to Weston Road, and at some time later I'll show a map on YouTube. There was a big shed to the left of the path, just behind the house. The garden had lawns, flower beds and a rockery, a fish pond under the back window, a large vegetable garden and fruit trees. I loved it. Uncle grew the vegetables and Auntie the flowers. Gladioli were one favourite, all different colours and ramrod straight. But Auntie particularly loved carnations, big blooms, heady with the scent of cloves. A mass of evergreen honeysuckle trailed over a heavy wooden square arch across the path near the shed. In the summer it was covered in blooms and the scent drifted in through the open kitchen door. We used to pick the flowers and suck the nectar from the ends. The honeysuckle was from a root that Mum and Dad dug up in the woods and gave to Auntie when they were courting. Dad took a cutting to Stuartby when we moved there, and I now have a plant from it in my own garden. I know it is not my imagination that a lot of flowers then had more scent than they do today. Growers bred out scent in favour of beauty and are now trying to breed it back in. My parents started going out together when Mum was 16 years old, and they married 9th of October 1940 at St Martin's Church in Vicarage Road, Fenny Stratford. Dad was in the army, and having returned back to England from Dunkirk earlier that year, was able to take some leave for his wedding. Dad had that Christmas at home and was in England until December 1941 when he was sent to North Africa. Mum continued to live with Auntie and Uncle. Dad had a leave, his first time back in England since December 1941, in January 1944. He embarked for France on D-Day, and I was born that October.